How are you? I know mine are filthy. Absolutely filthy.
Calling the meeting to order. Calling to order the city council meeting of Wednesday, June 28th, 2023. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Knoll?
Here.
Ms. Atra?
Here.
Ms. Wellman?
Here.
Mr. Daga?
Here.
Mr. Lemay?
Here.
Mr. Jensen?
Here.
Dr. Wong? Here.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the community who have joined us. It seems that each week our numbers are growing, and I think we're going to consider for next month taking the show on the road and looking for a larger venue for our meeting. If this So for you in the hall, there's, well, I can't talk any louder, I'm sorry. Next month, we're probably going to move it to another location, so there'll be more room. Our first, I'm getting to it, gang. Our first order is to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Because we have such a large group, I'd ask that everyone silence their cell phones during the meeting. I appreciate it. Our first agenda item is a presentation by John Sangdal, President of the Orange Alumni Association. And Mr. Sangdal wants to present a new project that the Alumni Association has underway.
Mind if I stand?
No, please.
I'm John Sangdal. I've been a resident for almost ever, but not a type of Pike, Moreland Hills. Grew up there, bought my mom's house, took care of my mom. I was a school teacher for many years, did a project with Don, and then I retired. But I'm also president of the Orange Alumni, and I'm really excited about this new project that we're doing. It is the Orange Veterans Honor Wall, and you'll see it, what it looks like, the wall, as I go through the presentation. I want to give you a little brief history. How is it that the Orange Alumni wanted to be involved with something with the veterans? I am not a veteran. I know of a lot of veterans. I taught a fair amount of veterans. After they graduated, they became veterans. So I was collecting information about state champions and runners-up. If you know about our school, there wasn't a whole lot of signage. And I went to, not our current athletic director, he's really, really good, but to an athletic director, and I said, do you have a list of all of our state champions and runners-up? And the person said, no. And then turned this way. So that motivated me to research about state champions runners-up, which then I found this 5-time state champion, Matt Coker, and I wanted to learn more about him. He graduated in 1944. So I went on our archives, and I found a school newspaper. And the school newspaper had a list, and I got 147, parentheses 142. They had both numbers on this list. And I found all these guys, because it was World War II, that were signed up. Now, everyone had to sign up. And 142 or 147, which one you're going to use, that's a lot. Because there was only 20 in the graduating class back then. Now, yes, everyone had to sign up. Does it mean that everyone served? Some got discharged, which I found out for one reason or another. Like my dad was colorblind. So they found a place for him, but because he was colorblind. The thing he wanted to do, he couldn't do. So we started in 2019 collecting and setting up a Google form and collecting information for Orange veterans. We went to other schools to find out what other schools do to celebrate student achievement. We went to Perry, we went to Mayfield, a whole list of them. When we got to Perry, Perry's got, if you ever go there for an event, look at their wonderful Veterans Wall. It's just breathtaking. When I assistant principal to put it together, I was there with Joyce Brandt, another teacher, and the kids, you know, the bell rang, kids are coming through the hallway. They walked by this, and there was a hush. And then they kept up their conversations as they went farther down. So here's that newspaper article. And you can see 142, but really it's 100, then it says Orange now has 147. And then I looked in the next newspaper here, and we had several more. So they added to my list. So, but I want to make sure this list is correct. Well, it isn't necessarily 100% correct. I vetted every single one of these, and I'll show you how I did that. One of them is a guy that actually graduated from North Shore in Euclid, and he was killed in action. So he didn't graduate from Orange. We have a criteria of being on this wall. You have to graduate from Orange, or you left to go into the military before you graduated. And then, and you'll see a cute story about a guy that got his diploma 70 years later from Orange. So let's take this guy. How did I vet him? Well, I did Ancestry.com and I put their name in. Marion Jackson. I did Cuyahoga County. As you see over there, it has a whole list. It's got the Army list, it's got the Marine list, it's got the military, you see down below. And so I searched him. And here he is. He's a Pepper Pike resident, even though it says birthplace Chagrin Falls, but you can see he's Chagrin Boulevard, Pepper Pike, Ohio. So I want to make sure, though, because this is his draft card, I want to make sure that he is that he fought, or that he went overseas, or was in some. So I Googled obituaries, and I'll click on this one. I'm hoping that our Wi-Fi works great. And as you can see, I want to make this bigger a little bit, maybe, for all those people that are my age. You can see that, yes, he passed away, born in August 1923. I'm sorry, born August 23, 1922. But you see, he's an Orange graduate. And this guy right here, I'm going to point it out, I got to do it with my mouse, but he was a World War II prisoner for 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
And a Pepper Pike resident. So I did those kinds of things. There's another one that's here. He was part of the Air Corps, and you can see here I used different other websites when I Googled, and you can talk about him a little bit. So I wanted to make sure that it's correct. So Orange Alumni then has created a Google form to collect information about these veterans. Here's a form right here. It's got their first name, their last name, where they served, their maiden name, what branch, where were they stationed, and there's one thing I forgot. Where did they grow up? Did they grow up in Moreland Hills? Did they grow up in Orange? I can get it from their draft card, and it's not going to necessarily going to go on our wall, but it would have been nice to give you guys that information, to give Orange that information. Moreland Hills has a list of veterans. So then as a Google form, it goes on a spreadsheet. So you can see these names here. I know it's small, but that's okay. These filled out the form. Moreland Hills resident, Father Joe Bricatelli. I had him in class. He was a wrestler. He went to Gannon, become an engineer. He then finished, and he said, "Yeah, I'm going to go to the priesthood." So he goes into priesthood. Then he has a parish of Parma. It was right around 9/11, so a lot of his kids that he was responsible for were going in the military. So he went to Bishop Pilla and said, I think I'd call to be a chaplain. And talked over Bishop Pilla, and Bishop Pilla said yes. So he can go in right away as a chaplain, an officer. But not Joey. If you know anything about Joey, he's a great guy. He went to boot camp. So when he finished boot camp, all those guys in the Army knew he went through something. You know, I know it was boot camp. That he wasn't necessarily, he was in Afghanistan. He also was in Arlington doing funerals. He was in West Germany. But here's the list. They filled it out. Here's the whole thing here about the branches. And this list, it does not have a timestamp to it. That's the World War II people, or the Korean, I get some Korean names, people that fought in Korea.
So how many folks do you have on your list?
I have 256 so far.
Okay.
So here's, last one is right here.
Okay.
257, 56, because I don't start with one
And what's the wall going to look like?
when you get there. So anyways, all this, the special information is going to be on there. And I'll show you that in a second. This is on our website. So you go to orangeschools.org, and then you click on alumni, and then you click on Orange Veterans. Here is what the wall is going to look like. So it'll be a skin coat. Each panel here will have, he has it as being clear. It's the same guy that's done our other ones, our Hall of Fame for staff, our Hall of Fame for alumni. And he was going to say, maybe this is clear, but with black lettering, you're not going to see it. So maybe if we make it a little bit translucent a little bit so that, you know, like it's cloudy just a little bit, but you can still see the flag. In the middle, we will have a never forgotten or killed in action with a soldier saluting. We have 5 that lost their lives, 4 in World War II and 1 in Vietnam. That's what it looked like. Now, I'm asking some help here that you can help me promote this. This is a great community event. The band's going to be there. They're going to play each of the medley of the military. We're going to have honor guard. We are going to have, like you guys did with Memorial Day, the echoing taps for the 5 that passed away. We'll have some people that speak at this event. So you can come here. I also have a current list of those that died, and then these here that filled it out. Now, I do have one problem. Back in the 40s, there were no yearbooks because of the war. So I don't know when they graduated. I could get from their draft card, I think, and guess from their draft card. So that's why I got 1943, a whole list. And Orange only had 23 people, guys that graduated in 43.
Well, you get us what you need, and we'll, push something out about people, volunteering their information into you.
That'd be great. And it's
Okay.
easy to do. So it's on that same page. So
Right.
if you go to that military webpage on our orangeschools.org, click on alumni, you'll see, click here. and that will take you right to that page
Okay.
to fill out. So, that's what I'll just do one more thing. Here's the event. It's gonna be November 12th at 1 PM at Orange High School Auditorium. And I already explained that Van will be there, Honor Guard will be there. We'll have a few that are, like, we have a couple colonels, a lieutenant colonel, to speak also, but it's not gonna be long. They have like 5 minutes to say something. Do you have any questions at all? Oh, I have a committee, so not just alumni. So Nancy Damiano's with alumni, Joyce Brandt's with alumni, but I've collected 5 military people to be on my committee about how should this wall look like, and how should we unveil it, and so on and so forth.
Well, we look forward to it. I appreciate very much your,
Are they allowed to ask any questions?
I just wanted to say, for those of you who don't know John, I mean, he puts his heart and soul into this, and the amount of work that he puts into not just this, but the athletic board, the Hall of Fame, all the alumni events is beyond what you can imagine. It is far beyond what you can imagine. And also many of the people who serve on the alumni board, like Nancy Damiano and Joyce Brandt, and their commitment to the community is just unparalleled. So I just, this is, you could probably tell from what he did, but this has been going on for quite a while. I know you've been talking about it, and it's, I know, an effort that you love, but it's been a lot of work, and it's very much appreciated.
Well, thank you. The wall's gonna be about 21 feet wide. And it will be in a place, if you're familiar with Orange High School, if you walk out of the office, like you did something wrong, you walk out of the office and you're walking towards the media center, and there's all those windows to look out to the courtyard. You keep on walking, and then there's a brick wall. And because it's skin coated, we can make it bigger if we need to. And that's what it's gonna be. So every day, a kid's gonna walk by it, an orange kid's gonna walk by this.
I know in Lima they're doing something similar to this.
They are.
And the families are donating in honor of their sibling father. So I don't know if you need funding.
We do need to fund it. The school said that they would step up. All the other ones that we did came out of the alumni. So that hurt our funding, the amount of money that we have in our thing. So we were gonna do something like that. But the
I
school
bet
can-
some people would be interested in contributing.
That would be great.
This is really an honor for us, for them, so
Yeah, if they
might
could.
seek money from people that care.
I wonder if we could put something about it in our newsletter so that people can be aware of it.
Yes, that's what another thing I was gonna get to. If you can publicize it, I'm going to Moreland Hills on the 12th. I'm gonna go to Orange, I'm gonna go to Woodmere, and I'm also going to go to Hunting Valley.
Is there on Orange School's website, is there any link out there?
Yeah, so if you, I'll walk you guys back to it. Give me 1 minute. That's my email, so I don't think that that's appropriate. So if you go to Orange Schools, here we go. And then you see the alumni right here. All right, so here's our home. If you are an alumnus and you do get the email by snail mail, go to click on this and fill out the form so we can just email it to you. But right here's the one, and there, it'll tell you all about the event. It will tell you what the wall is gonna look like. We are gonna change, we are not going to go by rank first. We're gonna go last name, first name, then branch and rank. There's a reason why. I'm in World War II. I go in as a private. I could come out as something else. I do not know what the something else is. I do know by vetting them, they were either in the Asian theater or something. And these, if I just give me a minute here, if you could, and I don't have pictures for everyone, but this guy right here, was in the Army. He was killed in, I think he's buried in France. It looks like Arlington. This guy right here, I don't have a picture of him, so that's why they did this. His mom sent in to our school newspaper that he shot down his first zero, but he got shot down and he survived. And then the next time he went up, he got shot down, and obviously they can't find him because he's somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. But you can see, and I do want to tell you this. These people here all have a QR code on that wall. So someone could take their phone and go, and it'll take them right to this site of each one of them. We will also do a QR code for the big list that you saw, this list right here. So whatever I have about them, it's going to be on that QR code. I've got several that were shot. The one that was in prison from Pike. So it's going to take a little bit of time to do that QR code, and I want to do it right. But it's going to be a very, very cool is not the word, but neat wall, I think.
John, have you checked? I know at the World War II Memorial, when it was built, we took my father there on a trip. He served as a Marine, and there was a database there, and a computer, you popped in the name, and his service record popped up. I'm wondering if that's a resource you could use to.
I'm thinking, I could be wrong, I think the World War II Memorial is ones that passed away. And that then leads me.
He was still alive at the time.
Oh, well then, you're not wrong. That's right, you just said that. It wasn't,
Sorry, it's just a database that might help you.
Yeah, that would be good. I know that I've used the archives of the military. I've gone to their database, and it's pretty clunky.
Yeah, this was pretty good. It put his name and popped up, so yeah, might be useful.
Yes.
I want to echo Melanie's comments that I know how much hard work you put into everything you do, John. This is really a lovely tribute and a lasting legacy for Orange Alumni Association and the veterans. It's
And important
really
for our kids to see
it
what
is.
their forefathers and
Yeah.
foremothers did.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank
Well, John, thank you very much. And
Sure.
again, I join in everyone's else's tributes to the efforts that you've brought forth here. It's a remarkable project that you've accomplished. And I will make sure I get you the info for my brother-in-law, an Orange
Yes.
High School grad.
Right,
And
yeah, he's on here, but not entirely. So you can put the entire part on there.
I'll get you whatever you need.
Or sister, or Bob.
Particularly with the World War II vets and that young kid whose face you showed, who, we sent our children off to save the world, and they did it.
Yes.
And so thank you for all of your efforts of, making sure that they're not forgotten. So thank you very much for all of this.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. And like I said, if you guys could put it in a newsletter, the time, the date, and all that, and make it like this is a
Yeah,
community.
we'll take
event.
care of all that.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Nice presentation. Appreciate it. Thank you, Jim. All right, well,
Oh, if you have any questions, you can use the alumni email, which is, you go to the alumni, and then you'll see John Sangel, president, and then you'll see there's an email that the alumni uses. And you can, I'll get back to you. Be glad to, if you know of anyone that is not on that list, then send that form to them.
thank you. And now to our next agenda item, our ongoing discussion of the walkway project pursuant to the outcome of the 2023 community survey.
I'm just talking to.
When we met just last week, seems longer, we had a great discussion about it. Since that time, there were some questions posed by council, and I think we're going to begin as we did last week with Mr. Shi, catching us up with responses to some of those questions. Don?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Just gonna plug in here and hopefully we'll show up there. Okay, good. Last time there were some questions. I think may have been some members of the audience, or people on council that may not have seen the Gates Mills Boulevard presentation. I pared it down a bit just to kind of give you a summary of some of the things that we presented back in, I think it was originally done in 21. There's a photo on the left there that's just, a picture of Gates Mills taken before the leaves were on the trees. Then on the other side, obviously it's greened up, but it is the same area. We've beefed up the trees to show what we're hoping to accomplish, both with the existing trees and adding additional plantings. We do have a couple people walking on the path just to give you a feel for the scale. There's another shot of another portion, and what we're hoping or aspire the median to look like by supplementing additional trees and making it more of a park-like setting. This is an overview of a basically possible meandering path. This is not designed by any means, but the idea is to have it sort of meander its way, wander its way through the median. There are areas where it will need to either be a little bit further to the north or to the south based on conditions out in the field. But the idea is to not just have a straight path running down the middle. And the location, the precise location will be determined in the future. I actually, when we originally did this, we did not have a current aerial that showed on the top left of the screen of the circle at Shaker, but you could even see where we have walkways and we've added connectivity to the center circle with some of those white lines over there. That's actually as-built information. This is just an extension that we're running up to Ursuline College. It's kind of an unusual orientation, but Lander Road is actually pointing to the, it's kind of at the 2 o'clock position, I guess. But that's basically, there's about 700 or 800 feet of path that would bring the trail up to the main entrance of Ursuline College on the south side of their campus. This is just a little bit of a zoom in on a portion of the trail. Again, this isn't a hard decision as far as where the path is going to go, but it gives you some idea of the scale or how it could kind of meander around the existing trees. And that's just another view. I think we had some really great drone shots, and we were able to put in what the trees and the landscaping might look like at a couple of locations. And there's just another shot of possible path layout and some scale as far as what people might look like or what they might do on the path. The funding, there were some questions about funding. When we originally applied for funding in 21 and 22, and we have been, as of right now, we have the award, or we've been granted the award. We're waiting for some legislation to go through at the state level, but we did request $500,000. Project cost at the time was about 1.2 million. I think we are still very much within that 1.2 million for the path itself. We did also receive a $250,000 grant from Cuyahoga County Department of Development, the Community Development Department, it was an ARPA grant that we received near about August of 22 last year. So that's another $250,000. That funding was for trailheads and landscaping and other amenities, excluding the path itself, just sort of the other spaces to create green space and entryways and signage, things like that, that can help beautify the path. So a significant amount of that would be towards landscaping and some of the hardscape features of landscape.
Is that, the 1.2 million is still a good number despite the
Yeah,
inflation we've gone
it
through?
appears to be about right, because I think when we submitted it, we had included some additional costs, especially with asphalt prices and things like that.
Yeah.
What we're seeing as of today, I just looked at the estimate this morning again, and it seems to be still within line with where we're seeing bids coming in.
So
So
is asphalt spiked up and then come down a little bit?
it's come down a bit, or it's leveled off, and I think we incorporated some spike in our initial price.
So this is the initial price for the first piece of Gates Mills, or is this the initial price that in the previous iteration, when we were talking about doing both segments?
This
I know
is
this also includes.
this was always the piece for Gates Mills from here at Brainerd
Okay,
to Lander, and then it does include the piece going up to Ursuline.
because that was my question, because
Right.
we've now added that other piece.
Yeah, that wasn't a significant cost difference, but that's in the current budget that we
Gotcha.
submitted to.
So just to make sure I understand, the 250 was for landscaping and the 1.2 million does not include landscaping. So the city's portion of this, as we look at it right now, is about 700,000.
That's correct. The city had some amount in the landscaping budget, but I think what we would end up doing is spending more in the landscaping with the 250,000. We originally had, replanting grass and planting some trees, but this will bolster that landscaping budget.
Okay,
250.
but trying to get at the bottom line. The
Yeah.
bottom line is
It's about 700,000.
about $700,000 for the city, and that would include landscaping, the trail itself,
Right. Correct.
hard scape.
Any hardscape that we want to add.
Okay.
But it's all within the 1.2, so make sure I understand. So
The 1.2,
total project cost, that the checks that will be written are 1.2?
no, the total project cost could be as high as 1.45,
1.45.
because you have the
Okay, you're
250,000.
adding that.
We
Okay.
got the grant, so that's not out of the city's cost.
I understand, but
Yeah,
just total
right,
project cost.
total project
So
cost.
that really is it should be on your slide, 1.45 total project cost.
We didn't put that summary in there, but that's how
Yeah,
it comes out.
okay.
Correct.
So basically $700,000, that's what Tony was saying.
Correct.
From the city, at least as anticipated through this. And I'm assuming that then the 250 will cover all our landscape costs, or are we and signage costs, or are we assuming there might be additional costs over and above the 250?
We would design to that budget.
Okay.
We're working in the process of, selecting a landscape architect to do these portions of it. You could always spend more, I guess, but that was the budget that we would try to design to.
Okay, because that was another question. I know I talked to Rick about it. I don't know if we spoke about it. There was some conversation about using some of the 250 to pay for either a landscape or park design. That was my question.
Mhm.
An entity, because this is more than just, placing a trail down, this is
Right.
supposed to be a park and it's supposed to be beautiful. And I think we're vested in making it beautiful for the community and also the people who live there. So would a part of that 250 then go for that? And do we know what kind of costs we're looking at for that piece, for that design piece?
Yes,
Okay.
we anticipated that design, along with the actual physical landscaping, would be coming out of that 250
Okay.
for those landscape architect amenities. Trying to create the look of what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, and we think that we won't go over, we'll be able to do that and do the signage and the number of trees we're anticipating
Yes.
all within the 250.
Right.
Okay,
Don, one other thing that we talked about, I recall that when we get rolling on this, perhaps there are going to be some other opportunities for some landscaping grants. Is that right?
There's always opportunities for those, and they may not come at the start of this, but as different tree grants are available or different other opportunities, you want to make sure that you can take advantage of those.
And this is basically an ongoing process. This is just the beginning then.
Right.
Thank you. From your point of view, and let's assume that the grant or the legislation goes through for the $500,000 grant, this would be money that the city would spend probably next year, the 700,000.
I would think so, yes. That would be the goal, to have it
And,
designed, planned, and bid in, early part of next year.
and that would be over and above our normal road infrastructure budget. So
Correct. Joe was.
It would be-
Yeah.
It's
Would be
already
coming-
budgeted in a 5-year plan.
it wouldn't be coming out of the road.
It's not coming out of the road slice. It's
Okay.
something that we've already budgeted.
That's in the 5-year budget. Okay, I've forgotten that. Okay.
For next year.
So speaking about the road, I know often when we've talked about this, and even before I was on council, there were conversations about this being a greenway and therefore an opportunity to have paving, have some participation in our paving of Gates Mills Boulevard. Is that something we're also anticipating?
Yes.
So would there be a cost associated? Would it be like a,
Yeah, there's a
50-50.
say, we will realize at a minimum, probably a 50-50 share on Gates Mills, perhaps more.
and are we anticipating doing it in conjunction following year, or is that something we're not really there yet on?
It's premature to have the
That
details of that
conversation.
discussion, but the goal is regardless to get the funding, even if there's a timing issue where something gets done one year and the roadway paving happens the following spring, you'd still try to make sure you get it funded.
Gotcha.
This becomes a multimodal.
Well, and that's why
area.
I'm asking,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
that's been the
And
long,
that's
I
why
know
I'm-
that's been long, the conversation.
Right.
Um,
No, that's what I'm trying to just confirm to you.
Mhm.
Yes, it's a multimodal development, and that's what makes that county funding particularly available for that.
For the paving.
So on the street funding, are you feeling pretty good that we'll get?
Yes, I mean, you don't want to make any promises.
I understand.
but- And the goal is, and two, once we have the legislation, then we can take that in hand and go to the county. But we're not at that stage where we can get everything lined up until we know
Okay.
that we have it and we're going to move forward. But it does transform this to a multimodal, which they are willing to participate in.
Good.
The timing and the dollars, we have to, I don't want to speak for the county.
Right.
That's our next conversation once we get this thing.
Okay.
And that would just be for this segment, though? Where we-
Correct. The further east piece is already paved. We already did the
Oh, we
paving
did
a
that.
couple years ago.
Okay.
So it doesn't need anything as far as the roadway portion goes. It's also
in
not
the-
as long of a segment. So,
But in the future, it might be an opportunity.
right.
And Melanie, just so you're aware, I think you were on council when this all happened. We approved this as a start and a trial. We have
Correct.
not really committed
Oh, I
to
know,
the
I
section
know that.
from Lander Circle to Cedar.
Which
We
I
wanna
think
see how
is
this
very,
works
I
out.
think is very wise, because we've never, this is a significant undertaking, and we've never done something like this before. So I think it's wise.
And I don't know if there'd be another grant available. I think that the
True, very
distance,
good point.
the distance might be about the same or maybe a little bit less, I think.
It's a little
You said it,
shorter,
a little
yeah.
shorter.
But you hit
So,
another.
It's another significant.
And I was really more concerned, actually, at that moment about the paving piece, but now that I know that that segment has been done,
Yeah, I just
that's,
think we should know the
that's
whole,
quite a relief.
story. Thanks.
Just a quick question. Have we talked to Ursuline about any funding from them that they might be able to support and help this, since it's kind of going to their front yard and they would benefit some? Maybe they could help a little bit with landscaping or cost. Have we breached that subject?
We haven't reached that.
And then another idea is if we don't have enough, we're kind of tossing the idea, I was just talking at home, and can the residents also, if they wanted more trees in front of that section, get approval to put more trees, or maybe there's ideas of maybe you could ask landscapers to sponsor a section or something like that if we don't have enough funding. Just thinking outside the box to try to think about how we can make it more green, have a better tree canopy, because I've been walking a lot more down Beechwood Pathway, and they have a lot more coverage around their path, which is just beautiful. And when I look at Gates Mills, I'm like, we don't have that yet, but hopefully we could achieve that if that's our goal.
That's the goal. The goal is that this will be a linear park. And it'll extend from the park that we've developed in the circle, and it will extend east along the boulevard. As Don mentioned, and I had a conversation with Melanie in the past. We have already begun the process of engaging with potential landscape architects, because you're right, Councilwoman, this is a large, significant project. It's not like planting a tree in your yard. This is a big design project. And we are looking to people to do it. There are, other than trees, there's, this is an opportunity where creative landscape architecture could really be a benefit, both to beautify the boulevard with, there can be mountains such as we see out here, and the circle where the landscape itself was changed with mounding, walls, things like that. And it creates a new, unique private environment. And that's the sort of thing we want to do. One thing that I was visiting for the dedication, the new Park Synagogue building 2 weeks ago. And it was remarkable when you're standing at their front door, this new addition, you look out, you don't even realize that Shaker Boulevard is there. And that is the product of landscaping, the way they handled, the grounds. So we want to have the skills of the people doing this to help us achieve that sort of look.
Mayor, I went over and looked at that as well, and it is quite remarkable what they've done.
Yeah.
And with not a lot of earth, it's not like it's a huge
No.
mound. It's just kind of the way it's contoured, and you can't see it.
Yeah, I'm glad you made it over. It's remarkable, isn't it?
It's great.
And I think, it being our centennial year, it's such an opportunity to restore our tree canopy that's been decimated by, maybe partially by disease, by a lot of people's maybe choices to remove trees in a different era. And this just seems like a great place to start. I mean, there are probably multiple places we could add trees, but this is an excellent place. It was never meant to be barren like that.
And I think the ultimate goal is really to make it more like the stuff that's further west of us, because that really is remarkable. They have a huge head start on us.
Yeah.
And it's a different area. It's quite different topography.
Yeah.
So I think it's a goal, and we're going to get a start on it. Which is,
Well, I think this is a great example of the wisdom of the word, that it's the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And those of us sitting at this table, some of us at least, may not ever appreciate the full blossom of what we're going to initiate out there. But
By big trees.
that is things that we enjoy today in Pepper Pike are the consequence of the wisdom and the planning of people 20, 50 years ago before us. And we're going to do the same thing.
And there's some wisdom to graduating the tree canopy. I know in my brother's city in Cincinnati, there was Tree Day, and they planted all these trees at one time in the city because it was Arbor Day or Tree Day. Hundreds of trees. Guess what? They all died at the same time. And so suddenly they were bare. And so you start all over again. So there's some wisdom to doing what you're doing, but then augmenting it as time goes by to the extent, and even planning for that, so that as these trees grow and mature and they all have a lifespan, we'll never have a situation where they're all dying at one time. It was a great idea at the time that in their city, it's Charles Park in Cincinnati, but they all died at the same time. It turned out not to be the greatest way to do that. So something to keep in mind as we go forward with this.
Yeah, I think you also have to choose different species and make sure
Right.
that they're
All that.
different, because you could get a type of disease that wipes out a significant number too. So
Don, from a process standpoint, we're waiting for the legislation to confirm
Mhm.
the 500,000.
right.
Assuming that all goes well, what's kind of the next step for you in terms of what you would do to begin planning? And
We have some documents that we have to provide them that they say, okay, now we're ready to send you the check, basically.
Okay.
So it's environmental documents. We have to give them an environmental impact statement, which we've already done some of the preliminary work on as part of our original application. So
And then assuming that gets approved, the next step would be,
then we start working on the survey and laying it out.
and having
We
a
design.
design at
Yeah.
some point here.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And at what point would you be coming back to council just to give us an update and where you are? What's
Well, I think there would be some, the landscape architect would be providing some graphics and some visuals to say, okay, this is what we think the front entrance should look like, or the entryway, or the trailhead, those types of things. And
Yeah.
here's a couple examples of some of the materials and plantings and things that we want to use. And there might be some areas where we want to add some mounding, or, cut
Right.
off some sight lines and all those things. And that would happen, probably midway through the design as we get to, all the
Okay.
existing conditions are known, and we've got, there's a sanitary sewer out in the middle of the median too.
Right.
So we
Right.
don't want to bury that any more than it currently is buried. So all those things kind of have to be thought through. Then we prepare, the sketch and get some preliminary estimates, and then we would go from there.
come back to council, and then get final estimates and then let contracts. That's kind of.
Right, then we'd go out to bid at that point.
And all the infrastructure is done on that leg of, like, we're shovel ready on the project.
As far as,
It's like sewer projects are done there. Northeast Regional Sewer is done with.
yeah, well, their detention
portion
basin
of
work
it.
is done. The only, if at some point we decided we wanted to add a sanitary sewer on that on the second half of that stretch, we would just have to be prepared for that. There's areas for that as well.
And since that project hasn't been done, that'll be part of the design process that I'm assuming we would make sure that.
Well, we would
that-
leave space for it. We wouldn't design it per se, but we'd make sure that there's a corridor for that work.
Okay. I think it's an exciting opportunity, and I think it's, this is neat to see conversations that started a couple years ago coming to fruition in a project. And I think it'll be a useful park for our community that extends to other parks. But that conversations and projects sometimes are not an overnight thing, so.
They can take a while. I know one of the other questions that was brought up was connectivity, and how many, either both on the walkway issue or also the Gates Mills path, how many people could actually access this from a side street, and essentially not having to walk along a main street to get to the path. So we did a little bit of an exercise where, yes, you might need to cross a street, just like you have to cross the street to get to the other side, to get to a side street or some other way to get to the path. And we've created some simple visuals so people can understand, okay, this is the capture of households that theoretically could walk down their cul-de-sac street out to the path, or walk to another side street that makes their way to the path. So I'll show you for Gates Mills Boulevard. And again, it's not an exact science, and some of the routes are a little tricky. So, but there's sort of a blob of red on the left-hand side of the screen. That's a pretty good chunk of the western half of Pepper Pike would have access to the path. But by coming up Kersdale or working their way through Old Brainerd Road picks up a big chunk of the community. Bolingbrook, Bremerton could make their way down to Kersdale and then over to Belcourt and then up. There are ways to get to the path without having to be on the main street. So somebody wanted to ride their bicycle and be relatively safe, or just go for a long walk and not walk on a busy street. That's kind of how they would do it. And I also, you can see at the top is Ursuline campus. I know Ursuline College has often invited people to walk their campus at various times.
Yes.
So it would be another amenity for the community to take part, to walk on their properties.
So your criteria were like easily, you can walk to
Right.
the trail.
Right.
That's kind of like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The toughest thing would be having to cross a street,
One street.
cross a larger street,
One
like
major
crossing South Woodland.
Yeah.
And if you could do that, which I think most people are comfortable crossing a street, where the real problems is when you're running parallel to a street for long periods of time. That's sort of where you're maybe not watching as a car's coming up from behind you or something like that. When you're crossing it, most people are pretty safe about that. So, and then just to put a little list together, there are some others, but the Park Synagogue, Ratner School, Ursuline College, obviously, the Pepper Pike City Hall complex, which includes our parks and everything. And then there's some other churches and synagogues. So total households, 836 would have access. Pretty big chunk down in Sterling Lakes. That's almost 300 right there, but they would be tied to it through Old Brainerd Road. This is for the exercise of, okay, let's put a sidewalk or a walkway the length of Lander Road from Chagrin, and I ran it all the way up to Cedar, just to say, okay, how many households can tie into that as a standalone? This doesn't include anything that's going on in the Gates Mills path. This is just strictly if you ran a walkway up and down Lander Road. Country Club, the Landerwood Shopping Center, Ursuline, and also the entire Pepper Pike Commercial District, which we already have a sidewalk that runs along Chagrin Boulevard that ties a lot of that in. So you got a lot of non-residential users that would be able to benefit from it, and just shy of 500 households that would be tied to that. Another one is if you ran a walkway down Shaker from City Hall, and I stopped it essentially at Pepper Creek Drive, because beyond that, there's really only a handful of houses that would be picked up. Park Synagogue again, and City Hall, and other churches and synagogues, and right around just shy of 500 residences, again, that would potentially could utilize a walkway on Shaker. Last one I did was South Woodland, Park Synagogue and Pepper Pike. Big number residential. Again, it also overlaps the Sterling Lakes development, but pretty significant, sort of that southwest quadrant of the city. A lot of houses, fairly dense, and it does pick up a lot of that. And that runs to the Pine Tree South Woodland intersection. Now, if you took all of those things, all of those pieces, and said and cut and just showed it on one single drawing, this is what it would look like. So that is not running the Gates Mills path all the way up to Cedar. This is just our current proposed one, and that additional discussion about some of the sidewalks. Almost 1,729 residences. I don't count anybody twice. That's the total count. There's some overlap in almost all of those. There's some overlap. So,
How many total residences in the city, Don?
according to our GIS data, is about 2,600. And that includes the private streets, especially along Cedar, which is fairly dense. There's a couple hundred up there, and it's a pretty good chunk.
So just getting back to when we were talking about some of the drawings you had, we now have the work the sewer district did put in,
Yes.
regarding flooding. Do we anticipate some challenges traversing that area, especially after a heavy rain? I know the point was kind of uncovering the creek, and I'm
Right.
just curious. I've seen firsthand what the creek can do after a rain.
The way that's been designed, I really think that very large rain events will still flow through the new structure that they put out there. So that really eliminates some of the
That's
spread going across. The path itself down there will be limited to one side or the other, and it's going to have to be at that stretch. It'll be fairly close to the roadway, but it's also an opportunity to incorporate some of the landscaping and the stream restoration project that they did there. As that kind of grows and matures, that's also going to become a point of interest. It's it's a restoration project, and it's a nice piece that we can feature a little bit too.
Sure.
Have you looked, if anyone has a chance to go slow along Gates Mills or get out, stop and look, it's very pretty looking down into that creek at the bottom of the sewer project. And I think it's going to become a very attractive feature of this path area.
And they've done a good job of making sure that it all got watered and it all
Yeah.
grew in,
Yeah.
which was important
Grass.
because we've had some spells of not a lot of rain, and did a nice job on it.
They planted a lot of sourwood trees that are very pretty.
PowerPoint available.
They're going to be nice.
Yeah, what I do after the meeting is I turn it into a PDF file, and I'll send it to Sheila so she can have it.
Yeah, you can just post it on the walkability tab. That would be great.
Yeah.
And last week's
Yeah,
too.
absolutely.
But I would like to, have an emailed copy.
Yeah, sure.
It's a big file. It might be something that would be a link that you have to go
Oh,
to.
you actually know how much
Yeah.
file is.
Yeah, you may
We'll
not.
figure that out.
Yeah, but
it's
we could create a
Maybe we'll
file.
have to
that-
Dropbox it somewhere. or
We
tweet a
can,
PDF.
we can get it to Sheila so she can load it up, but it might be hard for somebody to just download it.
If it's a PDF, that shouldn't be, hopefully not a problem.
They're pretty high resolution, so,
Okay.
yeah.
I guess worst case, we could all get copies for
Yeah.
our files and, you
Yeah.
know, if we can't open them.
Okay. That was really, thank you, John. That was
Excellent data.
really, really good information. Appreciate your hard work as always. Okay, that concludes, was there anything that you guys asked last week of Don that you feel didn't get responded to so we can scoop it up? And either he knows it or we can make sure that we get you that information.
I want to know kind of the status, because I asked for an FAQ last week. What's going to be our process with that? Do you want my help with it? And
Sure,
You
we
know,
just
how do-
haven't
how
had a
do we
chance to
kinda-
do it yet in the
you're
week.
you're kidding. In just this week plus the
We were
Taste of
doing it
Pepper
right
Pike?
before the
I
Taste
mean-
of Pepper Pike, and that night I went and worked
Right.
on it.
Right. But yeah, like I kind of want to give a time frame to the public. I'm seeing again some misinformation out there and some repetitive questions
Right.
that I think we have some answers to that I really would love to see that document go live.
I think before the next council meeting, we
Okay.
should have something, sketched out and even put online.
And like I said, I'm happy to
Sure.
collaborate on that to get it up and running too. Thanks.
So Rick, I have further sidewalk questions and process questions. I don't know how much time you want to allocate tonight. This is, I think, fantastic process that everyone's here. And so, just keep this going if council's in agreement with that. Okay.
Just one quick question first. Rick, you asked for council to submit questions to you. Do we have a list of all those questions?
I have all of your questions, Tony, and I congratulate you for having done your homework.
I gave you questions in writing, Mr. Mayor. They're right here on my form.
And Kathy, I think, sent
Yes.
some questions.
So I have about 8 questions on my process sheet that
Right.
I will count as submitted in writing to.
Right, and we will process through all your questions. I don't know if we're ready to do them tonight or not.
Well, I don't know whether those were questions that needed an answer, but questions that needed to be discussed.
Right.
As opposed
That's a
to,
fair way.
there may be some of them do have an answer, but some of them may need the discussion of council to come up with an answer.
And Don's input's invaluable. I want to give him time to, I don't know if you've seen all these questions or you want to.
Well, part of the frequently asked questions, nobody said, okay, these are my frequently asked that I'm getting asked. So I don't really have that list. I mean, it would be good to have questions.
Guess who started one, Don?
Okay, good. All right.
I can shoot it over
That's-
to you
that's
and
what
we
I-
can,
yeah,
as
'cause I
like a
can-
starting point, I did start coming up with.
Right.
Kind of
And
the
I can merge them as more people kind of keep asking the same type of question. I can, just
Yeah,
check them off.
yeah.
But there are new ones that come up, so I want to make sure I capture all of them.
Sure.
Well, maybe I suggest that for the next meeting, my questions, Tony's questions, Kathy's questions get compiled.
Yeah.
And given to Don for plenty of time, and then we can systematically go through those. And he'll have time to think about it and rather than rushing.
Right, I think that's a more deliberative way of doing it. I didn't want to just rifle shot these things at Don
Yeah,
and
yeah.
try to play 20 questions.
And also because the FAQ is being developed, we can just keep adding them in very systematically, so the FAQ is out there with those questions.
Yeah, I
in.
think that's a good idea.
So if we're going to do that on the question process, I'd like to talk about the process and the memo I sent out last week and get feedback from council on the process. And I want to also, I got numerous emails that were sent to Sheila, so my request for comment was fulfilled by many of you. So I want to talk a little bit about why I designed that process as I did and why I think it is the most effective and the most efficient way to get to a conclusion on this in an expedited fashion. And I'll speak for myself, and I'll ask all my council members to either concur or disagree with me how we go from here. At the end of the day, council is the final decision maker on major projects. Our committee system works great, and at every council meeting, committees will have a meeting, they'll come and report to council, and they'll either have made a decision or ask feedback on some particular matter, and 1 or 2 questions will come up and the committee process will proceed. Every once in a while, though, maybe 2 or 3 times in all of my council, there's an extraordinary project. A project that is big in scale, scope, time, cost, impact. And in those examples, I know each of my council members here are very diligent, very careful, and they want detailed information about the project, its impact, its scope, scale, and cost. One example of that came up a few years ago was the proposal to put mixed use in Beachbrook. And that went through the committee process, but then at the council level, we all had hundreds of more questions to ask. And so the council, in some respects, repeated what had happened at the committee process and did it all over again because not all of us could commit all the committee meetings. And obviously, that was a huge project with a huge impact. So having experienced that, was my view that it would be more expeditious, more transparent, more inclusive. Because the sidewalk is millions and millions of dollars, it has a big impact and it's a big project. I was confident that all my council members wanted this level of detail and not just relying on a committee decision. Most of the time, for most committee decisions, we do rely on them because they're not huge multi-million-dollar projects, and we rely upon, and I think council in good faith says, planning and zoning or road infrastructure, let them take care of it. This project for the sidewalks, as it is for the trail, is different in kind. And I didn't want to have the committee do it and then have it come up to council for final approval, which it has to because of the scale and size, and have it be done all over again because none of us could attend all those committee meetings. None of you perhaps could attend all the committee meetings. And I would like it to happen here and complete that process here. And I am quite pleased, actually, that all of you are here. I'm quite pleased the last 3 meetings, we've actually had momentum gathering around this in input from citizens, fact gathering. And I'm not sure that all would have occurred as broadly and robustly as it is occurring now. We could, however, if the council decides, stop what we're doing here, send it to the committee, have them run a process, send it back to council, have council review the process. If I was looking for a way to delay this, that's what I would do. But I think this process is working, and I widely support keeping it here, keeping these detailed discussions going, and then going directly to a vote by council rather than having it go through the committee process. This is a rare exception to the committee process that works fantastic in the city. Because we have committee members who are dedicated and diligent, but this is so big, so large, so impactful. I think it needs to come right here right away and keep this process going. But I would let me stop talking, invite my fellow council members to weigh in on what I just said, and we can go from there. So,
Jim, I'd like to add that I agree with having the process is what I would call a committee of the whole. I've seen committees of the whole assigned to take projects that are grand in scope rather than leave them with a smaller committee of 1 or 2 council members. And just to be clear on the process, I think that council really does approve in the final step what road and infrastructure does each year by approving the budget, which includes those road projects generally. And we get a view of all those road projects through Scott's good work and drone footage and all of that good stuff. So we know what the projects are, and we know what the costs are, and we put the final yes or no on those through the budgeting process. So this isn't that unusual.
but are you supportive of keeping it here?
Yes,
Okay.
I don't know if that didn't come through.
And
Other?
I would also like to join. When I sat in another seat just down the road on Sugar Boulevard, I participated in some very significant infrastructure projects on the school campus. Several of them, some very large in excess of this cost, but very specific to different parts of the campus. And the process that Jim is discussing is always the way we addressed infrastructure projects. It was always considered to be part of our due diligence, part of our fiscal responsibility, and basically the work that we were assigned. So to me, that is the way to do good and meticulous work, and I'm very supportive of that process. To me, it is actually the appropriate and normal process for a project like this?
I would like to say that it's, as I was watching Don's presentation, it reminded me of how we've sort of gotten here. On road and infrastructure, we have been talking about walkways and sideways for many, many years. I mean, it goes way back. And it started out essentially as just a few people dropping by to the Road and Infrastructure Committee and saying, hey, wouldn't it be nice to do this, that, that. And then it all kind of picked up when we had that opportunity to do the Gates Mills paths. And from that, during the pandemic, we all had the opportunity to walk a lot more than we did because we weren't going to work. So it's kind of moved through all that, and we started to get more interested in expanding not just the Gates Mills idea, but also walkability in general. And we had, as we all know, a couple of surveys that were created by people here. And then we had the one done by the county. And we learned a lot more. And through all the process, we've continued to learn more and more and more, which is great. I think the way we've sort of slipped into this whole thing, on road and infrastructure, we were thinking, we've been talking about this for a long time. We should kind of get a little more specific. And one of the things that we did was we had a meeting, and it was the last meeting we had. And during that, we talked about, well, if we were going to do one project so everybody could see what it was like, we came up with the idea of the one that would go from Orange to the Circle. And we brought that to council, as you well know, and it was an interesting reaction. It was never meant to be a definitive decision. It was meant to be, let's make this the starting point of this whole thing. And from there, many of you came up with ideas that, well, this is a big decision. This is a huge decision, a lot bigger than just one walkway here or there, or some of the street projects we have. So we also started hearing from a lot of you, which was great because now we started talking about the whole thing. And I think we all want the same thing for the city. We all want it to keep its character that it has, but we also would like to improve things along the way. I've always been of the mind that the more information you have, the better decision you can make. So the more input we get from the residents, the better decision we can make, I think. We have an opportunity now to continue learning and continue two very good words that Mr. LeMay noted, and that was inclusivity and transparency. We've already kind of started. The fact that we have such a big crowd here tonight is part of that inclusivity and transparency. And we have the opportunity now to work toward getting a more defined plan, defined costs. We saw a lot of that plan. We saw where it kind of would be, some of the beginnings of it. So we all want the same goal, I think, and it is a big decision, and it affects people's lives, and we want to take care of how we do it. And I noticed at the last meeting we had several residents say, hey, this is a huge decision. Maybe we could consider giving residents a vote. I don't think we should rule that out. So that should be part of this discussion as well. So that's kind of my feeling.
Keep it here.
I think it's the only, I think we've had the decision made for us, I think, by the interest that has been shown. I think it's, to me, that's what I'm seeing too.
I agree.
I'm in agreement.
Right. So I think we have consensus of council. This is the right place to have this process and continue what we're doing with input of all the residents this meeting. I think it's been a great process so far, and we should keep it going.
Now, at our last meeting, I made a suggestion that, because now we're having a council meeting and it's, it's a broad topic that we're tackling here, and it's taking our entire meeting, and it'll continue to envelop a lot of meetings.
is my suggestion, as it was last week. I didn't get, I guess you got to marinate it in it, the suggestion for a week. My suggestion last week was that we have more special council meetings if it is the wishes of council to, drop off the committee system, to have more meetings dedicated to this subject. And that way, we're not going to, we've done that before. We did that with, at the planning commission level, where we had special meetings regarding Beach Brook. We had special meetings regarding Medina Creative Livings Project. Because it was apparent that the standard meeting schedule could not accommodate the amount of conversation that was necessary to, address an issue. So unless a council, is just dead set against it, I know I can schedule things, but I can't make you drink the water.
Well,
I would really like, if with your support, to get a schedule going where we have meetings for this topic, and we will be able to schedule it then knowingly in larger venues, so that we don't have these nice people standing in hallways trying to listen to what's going on inside another room. And that way we can also conduct our usual business during council meetings, and they don't all have to come to our usual council meetings. There'll be a meeting they know is going to be dedicated to the subject they're particularly interested in.
I think that's.
So I have two
great.
questions. Number one, how often was road and infrastructure meetings occurring anyway? So kind of suggesting, since we're pulling this out of committee, that we need to do more meetings, how many were really scheduled for that committee as an aside? Also, my suggestion would be, if we want to move it off-site, perhaps our special council meeting, so our first meeting of the month, we perhaps meet at another location with a larger venue. That is our work session. We could just focus on that at our work session and leave the other kind of legislative things to our regular council meeting that maybe we hold here, that we kind of keep on that schedule, that knowing that our first meeting, which was the third Wednesday, would be dedicated to that going forward. I think that would still be a good process and clip. And also, I know a lot of us, I have another job too, and I love being a councilwoman, and I love devoting my time to this, but I think there needs to be a little bit of balance for us. And I'm not shirking away from the job at all, but I do think 3 meetings a month, including some of us that are on other committees, like Melanie on planning and zoning, that is a lot of our time.
And the other piece of it, I have to say, is it's only 8:30, 8:40. I mean, we've very often been, we did our whole agenda. If we were here for another hour, that's no big deal. We've done it before. I'll stay here till whatever time. When I was on the school board, wasn't common, but occasionally we were there till 11 o'clock, and that's just fine with me. I'd rather do the meeting. We really had only what was a wonderful presentation by John Sangdahl. And then we will have time for, usually you'll have some interesting and nice things to say. I'm sure we'll talk about Taste of Pepper Pike and other great things. The council may have 1 or 2 comments, and then the audience. So in the committees, but oftentimes, there's only maybe 1 report. Well, tonight there's the only possibility of 2, and a lot of the times they're quite brief. But we're happy to hear a 5 or 10 or 15-minute presentation if you have it, Chief. And so anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. I think we still have so much time. We could have 2 more topics.
I'd like to just say that Emmy made a very good point when she asked how many infrastructure meetings we have. We have those meetings quarterly.
Right.
So if we meet on this for an hour or so, an hour or 2, let's say, every month, we will be far more rapid than leaving it in the committee, and we will be able. And I think that we need to have a good amount of time between meetings so that we can think about what we've just learned and formulate our additional questions. I don't think a meeting every 2 weeks is really going to add anything. It's going to be too fast. So I'd like to agree with Melanie and that and Emmy that one meeting where we try to dedicate our agenda to this topic
Okay,
is the way to go.
I hear you. I have a different thought that plays off of what you all have said.
Sure.
There are some meetings where we have, like tonight, this was the agenda item
Right.
until Mr. Sengal added on. Otherwise, this was the agenda tonight. As you all know, there are some meetings where the docket is, very crowded, and those that don't deal with sidewalks or anything. What we could do is be nimble, play it by ear a little bit. And when we see that there's going to be a very crowded schedule for the
Regular agenda.
for the regular agenda,
Yeah.
maybe that'll be the time where we, I will simply schedule, something and, make room for it. And I'll just, as the schedule builds during the month, and sometimes our schedules, I just have to tell you, and, different, people, always wonder about this. A lot of things kind of pile on in that last week before our council meeting. And, things just start coming over the transom. And it's like, oh, we got to add that to the agenda. And suddenly council gets another agenda, once a day, twice a day, because things start, accumulating. Now, that's not always predictable. It's rarely predictable when that's happening. So we'll just have to be, I just beg all your indulgence. If everyone can be, nimble about this thing, we'll be able to, accommodate it as much as we can in a regular schedule. But though there may be times, I'm not going to predict that there will be, but there may be times when we need to, go outside the normal schedule.
So
And-
two facilitating points on that. One, you may want to have, we need to all be here if all possible, right, for this, because it's too important. Put a doodle poll out for what would be times that we could meet. So Sheila can get that. And here's a window where all 6 or 7, just so we have it in advance. So you're not doing on fly. If, I don't know, Friday night at 9:00 is perfect for everyone. You know that, right? And the other point is.
I have no life, so that's fine for me.
I'm in, Jim.
The other point I have is it's hard to predict, and I know as we raise questions, more questions are coming. But it's my feel that with 1 or 2 more meetings as robust as this one, and Don presenting next time the list of 15 questions that we've given him, at least I personally am going to be out of questions in a couple more long meetings, I think, unless something really weird comes up. And so I'm not sure, at least to get through this phase of the process as I've outlined it here, it's going to take that many more meetings of council. Do you guys agree with that general assessment?
I agree with that.
So I think in a couple meetings, if we, we'll make Don work really hard to get ready, and I'm sure he will, that we can probably through this question phase, which is up through step 2 of the process I've outlined. And then my process is having Don start to prepare preliminary drawings and whatnot, so we can start to get a sense of this. So
Okay.
we may not
Okay.
need to,
Yeah,
but
and,
I'm open to having it in our back pocket if
right.
that
And
was
I agree
That's a
with
great
that. I think a lot of the times when we have more agenda items, a lot of them are not very time consuming. So we'll have an ordinance, something having to do with tax collection, something having to do, we're buying a vehicle that we've kind of gotten a heads up on why we're buying that vehicle. So, of course, we should have it as an option in our back pocket, but, I've been pleasantly surprised in the time I've been on here. I don't really think I think our meetings are full sometimes, but I've never thought that they were excessively long. So I guess it's something to keep in the back pocket, but I think tonight is a perfect example. we've had other evenings when we've had a couple more items and it wouldn't have really added much more time.
Well, let me
This
just.
is actually an item. This conversation is an item.
Let me throw something out, just so, and this is more to our residents who are here. And it's something that I've given, considerable thought to. And I think it addresses some of the criticisms in the letter to the process and whatever else that we've seen. A lot of people are concerned that is the process itself simply, a mechanism to push it off and push it off and push it off. That's simply the blunt message being sent in some of these messages or letters that we received. I think everyone needs to remember that we are in right now the 2023 budget year. Other than perhaps the little bit of lander, that would be the only thing that probably we prospectively could even build budget and build this year and appropriate and happen. So, there may be something more. So I don't think that people need to panic that or get anxious. That's a better word, anxious, that the council is going through a process necessarily to delay something. But because nothing's going to, if we can resolve these things, it's now July. We have 2 meetings in July. We have August. We have time in those 2 months right there to push through a lot of information and come to conclusions about where a walkway might go as we approach the budget season for next year. And realizing that it's not going to happen regardless this year, that there is affordable time now over the next several months for these considerations. And I just think that I understand but I understand the anxiousness of some of the residents because I don't think they've received a real clear, the people in favor of sidewalks, that's 72% represented in the survey, or whatever the figure was. They've not received a clear message from council of the not when, but if. And because I don't think anyone up here is going through a process just for the sake of a process without thinking that something is going to happen in this regard. And I think it would behoove council to give those types of assurances to the public.
So so you got to bear in mind, so this process started as a product of the survey's completion, all right? Starting at road infrastructure now here. So the survey was just completed 2 months ago, where we got the information that, about 2 months ago, that the level of support.
April was when we were
April,
presented with it.
So level of support was confirmed by that survey, as Rick just mentioned. And so now we're starting on this process because we have that data. And I would hope that everyone who cares about this would give the council a presumption of good faith that we're trying to put a process in for a major project and get as much input from all the residents as we can. Once the concrete is in the ground, there's no changing it. So what it looks like, where it goes, when it goes, the phasing of that, all things very important, all thing council want to understand from Don and other experts. And when you get input on, so this is the process that's working. The fact that all of you are here tonight, all of you were here last meeting and the meeting before that, giving us input is great process. And we need to continue this and finish it. And the fastest way to finish it is to keep it right here, not quarterly meetings of the Road and Infrastructure Committee, because you're all here giving input, and I don't want to stop that. So, and I said to the mayor just now, I think 1 or 2 more meetings of this kind of question and answer, I think I'll be out of questions.
Well, and I echo what you say. I mean, I believe in the collaborative process. I don't know if 1 or 2 people out there, have created a false narrative in their own mind, have some kind of conspiracy theories. I know we live in that kind of times. I've long learned that if you do your work with integrity and you do the right thing every time, then that's the best you can do. You just plug away, doing the good work. And I've lived that experience previously. I think that somebody can spread something that's not true. Our work isn't to sit here and correct ideas people have made up in their heads. I'm sorry, but it just isn't. Our job is to be responsive to the community that elected us and do the work. And that's what we're all here to do. That's what this conversation has been. That's why we talk to Don and do a lot of prepping for our meetings. So I don't see a problem. I think we'll be just fine.
Does all council share that, I'm assuming?
Can I say one thing? I really appreciate the fact that you have sort of are proposing the idea that we have meetings in a place where a lot more people can be. It's a great place for us to get information from you. It's difficult sometimes to communicate all the time. I know some people who want the sidewalks quickly want them now. Some people who don't want them forever. So we're trying to make a decision based with a pretty broad set of parameters. So I think it was good news for me to hear you say that we could have more people. And I think if you go back to even the income tax situation, we had a lot of town hall meetings, and it was hugely helpful to council to understand where everybody came in on that. And I mean, I think this is of that kind of magnitude. It's that big of a project. So I'm glad that is in the pipeline.
One thing that I want to do, because I understand council wants to do this committee of the whole, as Tony phrased it. I am troubled, I have to acknowledge, about the exclusion of our citizen members of the committee being excluded from the process. I'm not comfortable with that, guys, because you get people, either new members of the committee or recent members. We have members on that committee who have the residents are on that committee for a reason. Someone like Seta Ergen, he's an engineer. He was placed on that committee 12 years ago to provide very skilled, knowledgeable pushback to this gentleman in the corner, because I'm a lawyer. You're a lawyer. You're everything. A doctor. We're just not. We don't have that professional skill, and that's why I wanted someone like that on a committee. And I think that the council will benefit by our not making them council people, certainly, but by including them in this conversation as we go along. I think that'd be valuable for council. I think it's valuable because they are resident representatives of the community to be part of it. They've been part of a lot of decision-making. I think it's respectful to them. To John Sullivan, he's been there 12 years, a pavement expert. These are the people, these are the subject matter expertise individuals. Michelle is, tied into this community, in ways that, well, I'm not certainly, and I'm the mayor, I'm not tied in to the voices of some of the community that way. I think the council benefits from that. Not that they have to be abided by, but their voices should be part of this conversation, I think.
They're free to be here or participate however they wish.
All of the community is invited, and
I understand that, but I'm saying in a way almost acknowledged and above and
Well,
beyond.
they sent
Because
us an
they're the
email
ones
today
who have
with
served
your-
a dozen years on committees and now are being told you're not part of the conversation.
I don't think that's
That
the
is an
case.
unfair
I don't
characterization,
think
and
that's
I
the
don't think
case.
that anybody should feel that. We value our appointed members of committees. They have valuable input, and they have gotten the conversation to this part.
Well, then I'll make
So
sure
I
that they're
think
part
that
of it.
they should be feeling that way. I will say that to all of them. Thank you for your service. It is nice that you do this. However, I do think that it needs to stay here in council's committee. And of course, all of the public, not just our appointed members of committee, everybody is invited to the
Of course.
conversation.
Of course.
So nobody should feel slighted by that. That's, I think that they're taking the intent the wrong way. I did want to mention that, anecdotally, speaking with somebody who helped with the Orange Village trail process, that process from survey result to really the whole concept took over a year for them to develop. So I think that if you're looking at our timeline, we are chugging quite along. And I think the insinuation of the if and when that was directed to us, in my mind, things are an if until I have facts. And as those facts develop, my if becomes a when. Until then, it is still an if. But I think that our conversations have provided a lot of dialogue and information and facts that have been really helpful in sculpting this idea. So.
Okay.
I also do have to remark that the Road and Infrastructure Committee meetings are at 7:30 in the morning on a Monday, which is not conducive for a lot of residents and people that have professions to come to those meetings. And this, I think, is a perfect opportunity to have our residents involved because some people work at night, but more people work during the day.
And it is a good point that both of you have made, that many of our residents maybe have never had the opportunity to get involved, never have had the opportunity to be appointed to a committee, but their voice is just as important. And they might also have expertise, and they might actually be impacted firsthand in one way or another because they live along where there could be a sidewalk or a trail, or because they want to use it. And they should be able to speak to that to us. That's why we are here. And I agree that giving everybody a voice is very important. And something so impactful as this, it's necessary.
So just to follow up on the process, any other comments on the process from members of council that I outlined in this? Someone pointed out I had 2 paragraph numbers 3s. I will fix that. But is there a consensus on the rest of the process as I've outlined it here? Is that, we're good with that?
But it may, to me, as I read it, Jim, I think the process needs to be more fluid. I think as you go do questions, you're asking Don to do things from time to time.
Yeah.
I think conceptually, certain things work, but it's going to have to be fluid enough that it, moves back and forth. I don't think this is you can't treat it as a rigid,
No.
this is the way we do it now. Now we're at this step. Now we're at this step.
Couldn't agree more. And things will go back and, 10 steps forward, 1 step back, and then 10 steps forward again, for sure. But in terms of tasks to accomplish, that's really what I'm asking. We're going to follow, these things need to be accomplished so that council has the final input from our citizens, a final budget for the entire project, eventually final plans, but preliminary plans to start. And then we have a voted council to go forward. And I think that's the process I've outlined here. Also before that, having a town hall meeting to have a final with probably at the high school gym or someplace big, where we have a chance for input from the citizens on the preliminary plan that Don will develop. And I think after that, it's straight to a vote from council to proceed or not based on that plan.
I'd like to say that I appreciate that, Jim. I do think, as I said before, I think the citizens' input is extremely important with us, as we've had with other huge decisions in the city. I don't think we should rule out the possibility of the ultimate survey, which would be a vote. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but I haven't ruled that out.
It's worthy of a
I'll finally say
discussion.
something after a long time. I listen more, but we don't have much to say generally. The way I look at this issue, we can discuss all the merits of what, where, how, when, if. It's an issue where the community or our residents are clearly polarized. Some are absolutely against it, and some are absolutely for it. And at the end of the day, these 7 of us who will ultimately end up voting one way or the other, will make half the people unhappy. I totally agree, and I don't often agree with Scott, but this time I totally agree with him, that we should have a referendum. We can have 20 such meetings and still we won't come to a conclusion. We're not gonna change anybody's minds. And it is a major expenditure. It is a major, I mean, we have done surveys. If the surveys support 72%, we will question, was the survey valid? Was it representative? What is participatory? Was it mailed? What is emailed? I think we can discuss ad nauseum. We can have Don spend tens of thousands of dollars just preparing, outlines and budgets and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's the citizens. What do they want? And I think we could save ourselves a lot of gripe and a lot of unnecessary polarity by just giving it to the vote of the citizens, let them decide what they want, and then council can just implement their wishes. A lot simpler.
Steve, I have a question piggybacking on what Mano just proposed. Is that a possibility?
Yes.
A referendum vote for,
Yeah, the Ohio Supreme Court, in a case out of the city of Bedford, allowed Bedford to answer the question, should we put, or should we study the mayor-council form of government? Some of you may know that the city of Bedford is a city manager form of government with council. And there had been a thought, and the Board of Elections had said, we don't put things on the ballot unless they have the force of law.
Okay.
The Supreme Court said charter municipalities, because they have a charter, can put a question on the ballot, even if it does not immediately result in the enactment of a law. So if you wanted to just put an issue on the ballot, do people want bike paths or recreational trails or sidewalks or whatever you want to call it? I think you need to give sufficient specificity. I mean, in the Bedford case, it was, do we switch from the city manager form of government to mayor council? You probably want to define where you'd put, I mean, if you can develop a consensus where you're not putting sidewalks on every street, as I understand, it's never been the proposal.
right.
I think the key thing is coming up with the plan that would be voted on, which is part of this process.
Mhm.
This street, this side of the street, just kind of, here's the whole layout. Now,
The cost and the whole thing, right?
but I want to get through this process first before we're
Sure. It was just merely because it was brought up as I'm interested in learning more
Yeah,
about what a potential process.
If you
could
wanted
be.
to get on this November's ballot, you'd have to take action before the first week in August.
First week what?
In August.
August.
So basically in July.
So but that's something that should be incorporated in our conversations. I don't know that we're at that point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the reason I
no.
bring this up is, no matter what decision council makes, half the people will be very unhappy, half the people will be very happy.
Well, I
To
would,
me, it appears, can I please, before
I
being
suppose.
interrupted? Thank you.
you don't
I'm
need
not
to speak to
stopping.
anybody like that. Just keep
Well, I've
going.
been treated worse than what I'm doing right now
No.
by some individuals in this council. I don't speak much, but when I speak, please let me complete. Thank you. To me, at the end, both sides have to feel good at the outcome. And if I lose the vote, I accept it. If I win the vote, I accept it. To me, I think the biggest issue I have is, I don't even know if we have a consensus, should we have sidewalks? Until we do that, I just have difficulty with doing all this planning and pictures, and I just think we're spending a lot of money. I'm not sure where we're gonna end up.
So just to respond to Mano's comment, I think what's most important is this process where we let people know what the plan is, what streets, where. Sidewalks in the abstract is not something I want to vote on. I don't think anyone wants to vote on that. It's sidewalks that are here, look like this on these streets, an actual plan. And I'm hopeful that through this process we're going through, all the community input, some people who will maybe oppose, maybe they come to the view that, hey, it's not so bad as I thought it would be. Maybe some people will still be opposed, but I'm hopeful that this process will build a greater consensus as we get more community input and more meetings like this. I'm hopeful. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm hopeful. And
Some of the comments I hear.
and so I want to just go through this and get to that point where we have a plan and people know exactly what it's going to be before they firmly make up their minds on whether this is good or bad for the city. So just let the process work and be open-minded. Have a presumption of good faith and treat each of us with respect. I mean, one of the things special about Pepper Pike, special that's different than any other political environment in the country, is the level of civility we have always had here, always. And I want to keep that.
And I'd just like to add, I think what Scott proposed was that part of our process would be to decide whether this should go to the voters or not. And I think that is one of the final results that we want to come to. Not to just eliminate the process that we've decided we want to go through, and then just go right.
Include that in the discussion.
Exactly. Go right to the ballot.
Yes,
I'm
and-
not ready to say, let's put this on the ballot and let all these good folks and all the people who aren't here decide. We need to define this process. One of the questions I asked the mayor was, what would a vote on this look like? Because I don't know what it would look like. Because spending money, we spend every year in the budget. And councils, future councils can undo whatever we do. So if we said we wanted to do magically a sidewalk project, that wouldn't commit to doing it every year. That would only be, it could become a part of the budget every year. And that's all it can be. Future councils can undo anything that this council can do.
Sometimes for good reason, because they're unable to complete a project, and that has happened.
The money
That's happened in other
situation could
cities.
change.
That wouldn't be without it ever being the intent. So what I was going to say was something similar to what Jim said. I'm troubled by thinking that 50% of the people or whatever percentage will not like it, and 50% will like it, and everybody will be at each other's throats, and the level of vitriol will be here, and there will be false narratives created, and neighbors won't like neighbors. That is not the community I grew up in. That's not the community I know, and I think this is the right kind of work for us to do. It's not always going to be easy, but we're going to get granular sometimes. We're going to talk about details. So if we do decide to make a decision, or we do decide to take it to a vote, we will know what that decision means and what it will look like. We can talk to our neighbors and explain that to them, and they can make that decision with information. And we'll also know, which I think is very important, as you've said on numerous occasions, Tony, how much it's going to cost and what that means for our budgeting in years to come. We always anticipate things that can happen in Columbus that are the anticipated thing, meaning our funding sources might change. I know there are always conversations about how municipalities are funded. There's currently one going on right now. We want to be able to be nimble in our planning, and that doesn't mean that it would in any way impact any current projects, but we plan based on good numbers and details, and this gives us that. So I appreciate my fellow council members putting this effort in.
Is there anything more about walkways you want to talk about tonight?
I'm talking.
Okay. We'll then move on to our committee reports. Mr. Lemay, we had a meeting tonight.
We did. We had a finance committee at 7:00 tonight. Joe gave the usual report. Revenues continue strong. Do you want to discuss? We are truly blessed as a city to have a very solid revenue stream. Expenses are very closely in line with the budget he put together last year. So it's a very, very strong report, strong financially backed city. Gives us the wherewithal to do projects like we're talking about tonight. So thank you, Joe. That's all.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Chief Frazier is on vacation tonight, so he's not with us. Chief, anything to report?
Not much new, just continue with the hiring process right now.
Thank you. Jim, nothing? Okay.
Can we have an update on Shaker?
Sure.
Occasionally, there's somebody there.
Yes. Spectrum is almost completely done with their relocation. AT&T anticipates 2 to 3 weeks of relocating their wires and pulling poles out. And as soon as that is done, they will be ready to start on the storm work and complete the south side on the eastern half.
So maybe by the time we meet again, the poles will be.
Hopefully
Is there a
all
test?
gone, or
Is there a test?
yes.
Hopefully all gone or not.
Right.
Don, you know, I know anecdotally, but I drive up and down every day. They have a very skeleton crew at best doing this work. I mean, there's oftentimes, I don't see anybody working. I mean, I know there's zero we can do.
Right.
And I just think we have to be honest about it. It's a frustration.
Right. And some of the work, I'm not trying to go to the defense of these guys. Some of it might not be just a matter of throwing additional bodies at. Some of it's very specialized. They're reworking fiber optic lines that have to tie into the old lines and all that stuff. So there might be people
I'm
there
sure.
camped out doing it. Might be a small crew sometimes, but it
I know, sometimes there's, I know.
And we don't really drive it, but AT&T, for what it's worth, when they are, and they're actually supposed to start hopefully right after the 4th and just take care of it. So
Hope so.
Thank you. We had a very successful Taste of Pepper Pike last Sunday. I want to thank, as I did at the event, particularly our wonderful staff who worked very hard to put this thing together. Rachel Garrett in service was wonderful so far as her dedication to coordinating a lot of the vendors, all the vendors, and the equipment that we use. The service department, as always, was wonderful. We can be proud of the way that our service folks interact with the residents. I think there is familiarity and a mutual like between them. There are faces that are recognized from many years of interacting with each other, and it's great to have them part of it. It was a very good time. We had to scale it back a little this year because of the staffing issues that some of the restaurants face, and so we couldn't have the full as many people attend, because I didn't think it was fair to crush those participating restaurants with 600 plus people all on them without the additional restaurants participating. But we had a very nice participation by a lot of restaurants, and more so, I think the lesson that I took from it was that our residents, they like the food, they love the food, it's a good time, but what they enjoy that, what they like is the event itself. They just like being there and interacting with each other, feeding, just relaxing for a day as a community. And I think that was originally the goal of the Taste of Pepper Pike, to help build community and have people have a sense of belonging to a place instead of, as I've said in many talks, simply the place where they own a home. People need to feel part of this place, and I think events like the Taste of Pepper Pike promotes that and binds the community together. And I'm very proud that we were able to accomplish that. And what it did was put aside any idea that regardless of, we always have to have enough restaurants, but we're not going to shy away simply because it doesn't grow every year with more restaurants, more people. It'll organically do that or not, but it's, we had, a lot of people there. We sold a lot of tickets. This tickets sold out blindingly fast. People wanted to do this. And we were besieged by people disappointed that they couldn't get a ticket. And we will be back next year. Band's already booked, and we will go from there. So that's all I'm going to do for my report tonight. Council, anything?
I just want to mention that one of the residents I talked to who had just moved here 6 months ago and told me, I can't believe other cities don't have this, and expressed her happiness at having a city that invites people to come together. And she'd only been here for 6 months. So I think it says a lot about the event. It was great to see everybody there.
Yeah, and thanks as always to Scott for producing a wonderful short film about it. We have to tune it up a little on our website, but it's available for everybody to see. And as well as the videos from the prior years. You can see year after year the enthusiasm that people have for this event. So it's the great marketing tool that I use to attract new residents. I send them the video. I say, this is what it is. This is what you're not being part of. And they sign on. And it's great. So thank you, Scott. Any other council people? All right. If there are any audience comments, we'll turn to those. Sir in the back row.
Name and our address, right?
Name and address, please.
Michael Parisa.
And before you begin, was it Michael?
Yeah.
Before anyone begins, I'm going to respectfully ask that you keep your comments to no more than a minute and a half, even a minute. And if everyone else has said something already, feel free to join in their comments. And because there's a lot of people, and we'll get the gist, I think, of your comments pretty quickly. So, Michael, don't mean to interrupt, but go ahead.
Michael Parisa, 31049 Gates Mills Boulevard. I realize everybody's viewing this from their own specific lens, right? And it's tough to put ourselves in other people's position when they're at. I feel like the only thing unchanging is change, right? Our community is changing. Surveys multiple times now have shown that the community wants sidewalks, for sidewalks. The lens that I'm viewing this from is a pediatrician and a father of 2 young children. It was tough for me to get here tonight. I somehow helped out with bedtime for one of my children. I worry that other families who have young kids aren't able to come here and voice their concerns. The survey, to me, is showing that those families have those concerns, and that's their views that they want. I think the only worry I really picked up from what you guys were talking about, let's say it stays with Councilman LeMay's plan. At the end of that, if the decision is not to move forward with sidewalks, what happens? When do we talk about potential sidewalks again?
I don't anticipate that. So let's wait and run through the process and see where we are. I think it will reach a conclusion in a matter of months, including a plan that we all can see and look at. And I hope that process will bring more people into understanding of the benefits, the risks, costs, and all of that. So I can't anticipate that right now.
Thank you. You, sir. I'm going to try to call on some faces that don't speak every week when we're together. So you'll excuse me. Regulars, you'll excuse me. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name's Sandeep Modi. I live at 2450 Cedar Lakes. I'm looking for clarification. When you eventually vote on said plan, is the vote going to be on the plan, or is the vote going to be on sidewalks? It's confusing.
In my mind, it's on the plan, including the budget for the plan. So it's a specific plan, sidewalks on these streets and these locations. And we all know what it looks like. So we have not an abstract idea of what sidewalks and trail means. We have a concrete this is what it's gonna look like. And I would want a definitive up or down vote at that time and make a decision.
All I have are regulars at this point. Gentleman in the back.
Ray Andreas, 28549 Bolingbrook. I'm encouraged by the discussion about having a possibility of a vote because the survey had 27% response. Yeah, 72% said yes and everything else. But when you put it to a vote, then I get a chance to vote up or down, and it's whoever has the opportunity to vote. So I strongly suggest that after the process is done, if this has been brought to a vote of the residents, whether it's legally has to or not, it's such a big issue, it should be brought forward to the residents. Audience comments are all fine and dandy, we all make comments and everything else, but you can't really get a sense of what the community really wants by a group of people here. We're only a certain small percentage. It's the vote ultimately that says yes or no. And I would live with it. I may not agree with it, but I'd live with it. I think that we do need a walkability tab on the city website. Mr. O'Day mentioned that last time.
It's on the front page
It's up.
already, sir.
It is, it's on the front page.
Right on the front page.
Yeah,
On the front page.
yeah,
Under the
it's there.
picture.
I checked on it just the other day to make sure it's
Okay,
there.
it's on the front page?
Yeah.
All right, I missed it, sorry about that. How do I get my questions into the frequently asked questions? You mentioned compiling them and so forth, how do I get?
Send them to Sheila.
Sheila, okay. And not related to sidewalks, but you keep saying, well, the illuminating company and Spectrum, we can't really do much about them. You may want to consider, as this goes along, getting representatives in here and making them stand in front of this group and people and explain why those people in Shaker are having such a darn hard time. I think that you do have some pressure on them. You can crank them up a little bit, just saying, well, they've got their problems, it's not going to solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else? You, sir, in the check shirt.
Yep. JD Cole, 29650 Shaker Boulevard. Very encouraged by the meeting tonight versus the meeting last month. So thank you all. Good collaboration. Jim, thank you for the proposal on a process. Just some thoughts around more on your steps, like what are the outcomes? What are the criteria? What's a go, no go? It's not so clear. That'd be great to understand that. And you proposed either all here in-house or whatever versus with the road and infrastructure group. Not sure it needs to be one or the other. I think Mayor Bain mentioned, hey, what about having others involved? You could form a steering team, leverage people like Don, leverage your resources. You're all very busy people. You're volunteering to do this. And, why does it all have to fall on you? Right? So leverage, I would encourage you, please leverage people outside of just the 7 or 8 of you. And including residents as well.
Sure.
Mr. Hall.
Hi, my name is Brad Hull and I live at 29226 Edgedale, just around the corner from here. Well, I like the idea also of putting it up for a vote. And I have one question. On what legal authority can the council and mayor vote sidewalks in only based on an ordinance passed by the council and approved by the mayor? What's the legal authority? That's my question.
The Ohio Constitution gives municipalities all powers of local self-government. If you look at, it's Article 18, Section 3. If you look at the city's charter, council is vested with the legislative authority, and also by state law, they have control of the public right-of-way in Chapter 723 of the Ohio Revised Code. So all of those
What are they, please?
all of those authorities give council the ability to legislate the issue.
What's the Ohio Revised Code?
723.01,
And what's the 18, Section 3
Article 18, Section 3
of what?
of the Ohio Constitution.
But he's just guessing.
Yeah. Thank you.
We may as well hear from the other side of the halls. You disagree with your husband, I think.
We agree pretty well. 44 years this weekend.
Congrats.
This is really lovely. I have questions for Mr. Sheehy, and then I also wanted to ask something about last week's discussion. Can you hear me? I hate to speak public. Okay. So as to the paths, I was wondering, because in Beechwood at the circle, we were kind of scared by the fast bikers. And I was just curious, I think you said it was gonna be a 5-foot wide path. Would there be a center line? Would there be a speed limit? Would bikers and skateboarders be allowed? Would there be lights, street lights? Because I'm just wondering about, I'd like it to be safe for us if it goes through, but if there are fast bikers and skateboarders and, the kids, if they
This-
take it over, it might not be so.
Just so I understand, this is the Gates Mills path?
Yeah.
It will be 10 feet wide.
Oh, it's 10 feet.
Yes, yes. And it's a multi-purpose trail. It's designed primarily for recreation. Serious bikers will not use it. They're allowed to use the street, the pavement, and that's where any biker that's traveling at a fast pace. But this would be more beginning riders, recreational riders, somebody that's not on a race to get to the end. This is and typically the way that these are used, they're used certainly for what they call micro mobility, or like somebody that might be in an electric wheelchair or that type of device. It's multi-purpose, access for all ability levels. So
But to our point, it is a long downhill run, and I can see bikers just turning off the brakes and at 30 miles an hour for even a kid
Well,
doing it would be dangerous. Is there a way to regulate or restrict that?
There's design parameters for it. You don't design it so that somebody could comfortably go that fast. So it's designed in such a way that there's enough curviness so that people are comfortable traveling, in the range of about 15 miles an hour.
And to that point, also, electrically powered like vehicles, like bicycles, will that be allowed in this, or by ordinance, can they be prohibited?
That would be an
hybrid
us decision. That's
Okay.
something that the city could decide on, how they want to allow people to access it or what type of.
Because I know some
Speed.
cities limit those and exclude those because of safety.
Right. Yeah. Well, the idea is somebody shouldn't be driving around in either gas or electric powered moped going.
I mean, obviously, if there's a physical need, that's a different situation.
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm hijacking you a little bit here, but you raise a great question. So in terms of controlling people just going fast on a bike or otherwise, the design will help. Is there anything else that cities have done to just prevent going downhill very fast?
Speed limits.
Well, okay, you can talk about speed limits. The reality of it is, it's really not a problem. It's not a problem with people riding fast.
Okay.
If a kid's going too fast on his bicycle, he's probably going to fall and
Go
then
up
realize maybe I'm going too fast. Same with rollerblades and things like that. Generally speaking, people operate within a safe speed. If somebody's a runaway, you can't legislate it. They're not going to say, I was really going to go really fast. Oh, there's a sign that says 15 miles an hour. They have no speedometer on their vehicle. So there's no knowing how fast they're going anyway. They're just
speed bumps. I mean, is there anything?
No. The idea is to encourage mobility, not necessarily restrict it. We just don't see those being problems.
We have speed limits on Gates Mills Boulevard. We still have people
Yes.
going 85 miles an hour occasionally. So
What about street lights on the path, because it's so dark, large, it'd be nice if it'd be cleared for snow or.
lights are not in.
Lights are not. We don't really. The street itself isn't lit, so So there really isn't any thought for lighting it. There might be, if there's an issue with a crosswalk or something that requires some additional, we would look at that, but that's not something that's being contemplated now.
Snow removal?
We right now we're not contemplating snow removal. If you look at last winter, I mean, we make a living sending survey guys out to survey in all sorts of weather. We missed a few days last winter. You really don't have huge, heavy snow cover. It could happen for a couple of weeks in the middle of the winter, and generally you're not going to get a lot of use anyway. Nobody really rides their bike in the winter unless it's
Sheila,
wet.
with all respect, we have to move on to our next.
I didn't get to ask my other question. It was very short, if I may.
Go for it.
Well, we haven't decided how we feel about pro or con sidewalks, but in the last week presentation about the sidewalks around the circle at Lander, Pine Tree, Chagrin, we had a lot of reservations about that because we were afraid for the pedestrians potentially getting creamed by the Darwinian cars. So we were just hoping we could see the studies which you were quoting that showed it was safe for pedestrians.
Well, right now, a pedestrian that wants to cross the street is far more susceptible to getting creamed by a car because there are no sidewalks out there right now. And it does get pedestrian use. We have a bus stop that actually stops on the circle. People get out of the bus stop and either walk on the grass or walk in the street. That's what we're trying to avoid. So, and by what we're proposing, we're actually shrinking the circle to get vehicles to travel more slowly.
Right, I remember what you
Yes.
said, but I was hoping we could see the studies that you used to justify it, because crossing
Mr. Knapp?
Manning Ave, 2632 Summer Center Road. Just a couple of quick points here. February 17th, 2019, what came into council was we need to do something about sidewalks in Pepper Pike. That's when it was ballooned in here for a path on Gates Mills Boulevard. Okay, what was said at that meeting by council was that we need to have a survey on what's going to happen on here before we're going to vote on anything. But what was asked for February 17th of 2019 was the approval to put in Gates Mills Boulevard path. Council said we need the input from the residents to get this walkability. Scott Newell referred to it before in regards to how we got that point even talked about was people wanted to talk about sidewalks and places where kids could ride their bikes, and people on Gates Mills Boulevard on here. And what has happened now, okay, through this whole process, in Gates Mills Boulevard, we now have walkability, because that was part of the thing with the second survey, which airmailed in here February 17th to do this project with an immediate answer asked for by council for $1.2 million, and council pushed back. Okay, and it wasn't until October where we got the two surveys in, and it council, said, okay, yes, we're gonna go ahead with that as long as we get this $500,000, from ODNR. Okay, so now what's happened tonight, the approval of ODNR, we have a major sidewalk item happening in Pepper Pike. So for the people that think that things are moving too slowly and so forth down here, we're not doing anything to address sidewalks and walkability. And that was the big item in regards to why the second survey happened. The second survey happened because council said, we want to talk about walkability. This path on Gates Mills Boulevard was the end all at that point in time. Go back to the minutes of that meeting. It was the end all of everything in regards to sidewalk discussion in Pepper Pike. Okay, it's what's led now to this next item in regards to, are we going to go with, sidewalks in the rest of the city? And to Mono's, comment in regards to now taking it to a vote, we all need to be good neighbors. The item is that many cities have it, and I'm not saying that we should go to wards on here, but many cities have it where the overall city votes on something, but the area that's affected by that gets a secondary, count in the numbers. If people on those streets don't want that item, the majority can't beat up on the other people on here. If you look at the numbers, and that's where I was hoping that council would talk about what the numbers really meant. You hear people talk about that the survey showed 74%. Looking at that same data, it shows that 48% of the people said, I don't want a sidewalk in front of my house. Okay, so no one has talked about that, and it's misrepresenting the public and everybody to say, you can stop looking at the clock, Mr. Mayor. I'm here making some points on here in regards to, we need to know, and being a good neighbor, we shouldn't beat up on the people on those streets, on here in regards to, it could be that 74% of the whole population wanted, but like right now, the first street we talked about doing was Lander Road. 48% of the people on Lander Road, to the data that we got, say no, they really didn't want it in front of their house. Okay, and the last item, that I'll say here, unfortunately, because of the time constraints on here, we've all sat patiently, waiting on here, is that basically I live on a multi-purpose trail numerous months of every year. And with that, you've got to make it such that there's no motorized vehicles. The items with skateboards, the items with motorized bicycles, the items with one wheels and things like that, to work on that, the number of accidents that happen, and there's signs up all over the place that say, don't do these, don't do a motorized, vehicle. So the item should only be for motorized ADA equipment, on here. Other than that, you're gonna have accidents all over the place, and what the real intent of that trail was was for the non-professional riders and the kids that are learning how to ride a bike and the people that want to walk their kids in the strollers and things like that. That's what the trail is for. So thank you for the time.
Who's next?
It appears some of the council members aren't satisfied with the results of the survey for sidewalks. The city paid $10,000 and $10,100 for the survey. What would a vote cost? Putting it on the ballot, what does that cost? Does that cost anything?
If you do it at a regular election, I don't believe there is a cost. The only cost for municipality would be if there were a special election when there isn't already an election going on.
So you would have to work fast to get it on the.
Well, elections are like buses. There's always another one coming.
Is that it? Yeah. I don't see a face, but whatever that hand connection.
Ryan Barber, 33,000 Shaker Boulevard. I love that basically all 7 council people got involved in the discussion, which is great. I want to respect all my neighbors, whatever side you're on. I respect that, which is why I think it's a great idea if it goes to a vote. But everybody keeps talking about the survey. 27% of the people took a survey. I know there's a lot of elderly people that didn't know about the survey. I know there's several other people that didn't know about the survey, didn't take it. But one thing about the survey is there are no facts, no details given about the cost of the sidewalks, the aesthetics, how much green space was going to be taken away. So out of an 11-page survey, the 5 questions, I don't think anybody thought that was a vote. And they had it without information. So if you're going to count on that survey, I think that's incorrect. A vote would be the best way to go for everybody, no matter which way it ends up.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Marion.
I mentioned 29826 South Woodland Road. We're gonna be putting our house on the market probably in the next 5 or 6 weeks. The realtor came and was very interesting, brought a lot of statistics. Houses are selling in Pepper Pike, even though they don't have sidewalks, and in fact, many times are going into bidding. And if you read last Sunday's paper where they put the results of the sales in Pepper Pike, Edgewood was $800,000. I think it's Ainsworth, $475,000. Gates Mills Boulevard, $325,000. But another one on Gates Mills Boulevard was a little over $1 million. Lander, almost $400,000. Rembrandt, $967,000. Bolingbrook, $2 million. And if you've gone down Bolingbrook now, there are 2 huge houses with 3-car garages. Those people are, I guess, very happy with the $2 million that they're getting. Belcourt, $430,000, and South Woodland, $452,000. The point was, this is a very desirable area because it's sort of rural, but yet you are very close to groceries, to restaurants, to mall shopping, and yet you live in a very nice, calm, quiet area. We've lived there about 28 years. We do not call it a neighborhood. I know my neighbor on the right-hand side, he's been there ever since we've been there. And the other house on our other side, the 4 owners are in. Other than that, we know nobody else. I know some people, of course, because I've come to council meetings for years, but we were not looking to move into a neighborhood. We were very happy with where we are, and we also get the idea that the house will sell very quickly because they're very desirable and there are not many in the market. So I don't think we need sidewalks, but I won't be here to walk or not walk.
Well, we will miss you, Marianne.
We will miss you, Marianne.
Deanna Campbell, 31749 South Woodland. And I just thought it would be fun to go after you because I'm the other side of the South Woodland argument, and I do want sidewalks for my kids. My daughter was hit by a bike riding on the street. I've said it many times at council meetings. But my comment tonight was, I just wanted to say thank you all. I know this is a super contentious issue, and I do trust that you're all trying to take this seriously and represent your constituents in the community. I think we can all agree, I know lots of people on both sides, that nobody wants to do a wasteful process. No one wants to go through a long, time-consuming process just to get to the end and it go nowhere. So I take you at your word that each of the council members at least sees some vision of a walkability path that they're interested in supporting. And to that end, I'd encourage people in the council who didn't come up with the questions, the ifs, the concerns they have with the path, to do that for next meeting so that we can get those concerns out earlier in the process and they can be addressed, they can be answered. We can debate them and come to a resolution and move forward instead of just, this sort of general debating, are we gonna do it or not? If we're gonna move forward with the process, let's start debating the specifics. And that's my comment.
Richard.
Richard Lefkovich, 29579, East Mills Boulevard. The suggestion, first of all, the date of November Pike is ultimate block party. So that is a great event. On the idea of taking it out of ballot, I think if we look at the political arena, we all know that votes do not always correspond to polls and surveys that were taken. If they were, a lot of people have been elected, would have never been elected, and I guess Mr. Truman was the ultimate case of that. So it probably does. Putting it to a vote, it gets rid of all the question marks around a survey, and if it's done on a regular cycle someplace, it's not a lot of money. If the majority of the people want it, it'll be the same majority, and it'll pass. So I think everything to gain and nothing to lose by putting it on a ballot.
Barbara.
Thank you. Barbara Lowry, 28425 Shaker Boulevard. We are one of the residents that moved here specifically because we wanted countryside living. We wanted to get away from the urban lifestyle. We didn't come for the schools. We didn't come for the job. We liked it here. We've been here 30 years. We fully intend to stay here. The sidewalks are an amenity. They're a $4.5 million amenity. We have heard that it's city funded. I would suggest that it's taxpayer funded. And I would suggest that the taxpayer should have a voice in that. Existing amenities have been thoughtfully designed around the periphery of our community and on large municipal tracts of land. They have never before come onto presidential property, so this is truly different. I believe that the Gates Mills Trail is on a municipal tract. I believe it would be prudent to evaluate the utilization of that walkway before we move forward with any other discussion of walkways. Yes. Healthy communities are intergenerational. You have something for everybody. I believe we do have something for everybody, and I'm grateful. We're number one. We're getting it right. The other thing about surveys is surveys are helpful for judging preferences and opinions of those who responded. I do not believe that surveys should dictate policy. Thank you.
Anyone else? Gentleman, the doorway.
Hi, Paul Volpe, 32900 Shaker Boulevard. I speak after behalf of myself and my neighbors on Paul and Gates Clay of 32850. They left earlier because they got done with the sidewalk conversation. They were very happy to hear that you guys had brought it to attention, maybe a vote, and that you guys are so concerned about it. I too am also thankful that you guys put all your input into it. We're both very excited about the Gates Mills Trail, that's on municipal, but the residential, it's kind of more of an eyesore kind of thing. You get your house, you got this beautiful lawn, and then you got, here's a sidewalk here. It's only good maybe like 2-3 months out of the year. The rest of it's just rainy and snowy. So it's just more of an eyesore. And then you gotta worry about all that nice trees that all the people planted in their front yards. They gotta rip all that up. 'Cause I know you guys got 20 yards of city thing. So the vote is very, very happy with that. There's a discussion about that. So thank you. Thank you all for all you do.
Okay. Sir.
My name is Leonard Will. I live at 28355 Shaker Boulevard. Been there 25 years. I was delighted when I read Jim LeMay's proposal on the process. Was delighted by the first paragraph because he touched on history and the fact that Pepper Pike is going to be 100 years old. And on the 100-year anniversary, you're considering something that he also described as probably the largest investment that Pepper Pike has ever made in its lifetime of the city. And it seems almost ironic that we're sitting here tonight talking about sidewalks and pathways. Everybody else is talking about green space. And we're adding asphalt and concrete. The other aspect is, of course, the Van Swearingen when they laid this city out, and this is according to the Pepper Pike Civic League booklet. The Van Swearingens developed Shaker Heights and the community of Pepper Pike. It was designed as country estates. That's why you have acre properties instead of 30-foot by 45 properties. And anything that we do now is going to impact not only those who live here now, but the entire aesthetics. Again, quoting Jim LeMay in the opening little paragraph he had, for the future of Pepper Pike. Those of us who have lived here, there were a lot of ranch homes, some deteriorating. They've been bought up. And we already see the transition from the rural style community to what's been going up in the new housing. Big block homes, McMansions, and right next to it, ranch homes. Pat and I often talk that in another 10 years at the pace it's going, you're going to see nothing but big block homes and McMansions in probably 75% of what is now rural homes or described as rural or ranch homes in Pepper Pike. I believe personally that the only way you're going to get over the horns of this dilemma is by a vote, because no matter what you do as members of a council, you're still not going to eliminate those that want sidewalks and those of us who prefer not to have sidewalks. A vote would be the definitive answer. And it's the only way you're going to get a definitive answer is with a vote. Another survey won't do it, and implementation, even though the process won't do it. That's it.
Yes.
Hero Bar Savage, 29600 Shaker Boulevard. I live on Shaker. I would like sidewalks. I don't want to vote. I don't think we need to keep cutting this down the road, pushing it down the road. That's all we're doing. As Mr. Nash said, it started 4 years ago. So I think the residents have spoken. Many of the residents that come here are like me. They're older. They've been here a while. They're not speaking for the younger families. We have spoken to, my husband and I have spoken to a lot of the younger families. What I would like to hear from council is how each one of you feels about sidewalks. No one has really said that. They keep talking about the process. I would like to hear individually what everybody thinks of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dolores Andrews, 3549 Bolingbrook Road. And I would like everyone to honestly ask themselves, why did you come to Pepper Pike? What attracted you to Pepper Pike? If it isn't the schools. I, for one, was raised in the city, and it was great, and everything else. But I make myself at home anywhere I go. I don't need sidewalks. I introduce myself and meet and greet people. And I don't understand why city council, the mayor wants to take a sledgehammer to our city. I really don't. Concrete does not, it just doesn't make any sense. And two, when you're walking, as you get older, the pavement is not good for you. It's much better if you're walking on the ground or the grass. The other thing is, several years ago, there was a proposal to put, I believe, pathways, and I've been here for almost 50 years. We've been here for almost 50 years, so I've got a pretty good memory about what went on. They were trying to get pathways in, sidewalks. I don't know what it was going to lead to. And it was the same, that was what is going on right now. There's a division in the city. So they put things in the mailbox, not on the internet. That's not the way to operate when you're trying to get what people really believe. They need to see the evidence and all the proof and the facts. Well, they put things in the mailbox, and it was voted down by almost 73%. And it didn't get on the ballot, but they got the word and it ended. That's what it was. But one of the biggest issues was Lander Road. People didn't know what was going to happen. A lot of their property was going to be taken. Lander Road is a beautiful street, beautiful homes, well manicured. How could you destroy it with what you showed us on that screen? How are you going to take a sledgehammer to that beautiful vista that is a gateway into Pepper Pike? Everybody loves Lander Road. People always comment how beautiful it is. Two, when you go through Orange Village, and I go that way a lot, Lander and Brainerd, if you've seen those rinky-dink sidewalks there's no rhyme or reason to them. They're not manicured. You have to do if you're going to weed whip or take care of it. They're not manicured very well, and it looks like a haphazard job. And is that what we want on Lander Road? And I have to believe that a lot of people on Lander Road do not know about this. So I am begging you not to take a sledgehammer to our beautiful city. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Jean.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jean.
Hi, Jean Gascoigne, 30496 West Landerwood. Two things, and if the vote or whatever's going to happen, do we know, or the citizens should know where these routes are going to be? I mean, I just think it's very important. Whether you live on a tiny little pine tree or Shaker Boulevard, I think it makes a big difference if we're going to have a vote, and also for the kids who are in the schools. My other thing is we're all hung up, it seems like, with percentages of approval or not approval and votes, all these percentages. And I think that, people can twist them and turn them whichever way they want. So I think there must be an official way outside of this room to determine percentages. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Eric Sachs, 2797 Belgrade. I do like the idea of seeing a well-developed plan and then having the ability to vote on it. I'd also like to see any studies that might have been done in other communities on either the benefits, positive or negative impacts of sidewalks and walkability, and also any studies that might have been done in other communities on impacts, positive or negative, on property values. I think we're probably not the first city that's done this, that's been looking at it, and there's probably academic or other research that's been done to show the impacts. I think that would be valuable for the citizens of the city.
Thank you. Is that it? Good. All right, that having been a good discussion, thank you everyone for participating and sitting through it, and Stand up.
Shall we be here till?
That's okay.
Fix it. Oh, you do?